Hello, good morning to all of you. Let's continue with our chapter number 1, unit number 1. That in the last video I discussed about the several topics regarding the unit number 1, and there are the two topics remaining regarding the theories of the business ethics. So let's start. First one, there are the normative theories. Okay, so what is the meaning of normative theories? A normative theory to business ethics is that examines what ought to be occur in the ethical decision making. Means what type of things which must be happen in your organization or in your profession is called the theories of the normative, right? The normative theories. The word is normative is equivalent to the ideal standard, is a one type of ideal standard which you should follow whenever you're doing the business, whenever you do doing any profession activities, right? So next one is a normative theories, where first proposed, or we can say firstly introduced by the Fred Silbert, Theodore Peterson and the Willer Schiemann in their book called The Four Theories of the Press. Okay, so there are the writers who have to publish these theories. Then the examples of normative questions are, first one, how far does the obligation of the engineer to protect the public safety extend to the given the situation? What type of the norm or what type of the rules as an engineer follow whenever they are working for the public safety? Then what are the reasons that the engineer have an obligation to their employee, client and societies? So let's see. Here there are the ethical theories in the relation to the business. So ethical theories, first one is the egoism, second one is the psychological egoism, then the third one is a utilitarianism, then fourth one is a Kantianism. So first one, there are the ethical egoism, the theory number first. So in this ethical egoism, there are the two terms are considered. First one is the ethical purism. So what is the ethical purism? It's a indicate that there may be alternative moral perspective that are reasonable but no one of which are acceptable to complete and completely by the all people. So ethical pluralism is a one type of perspective of moral. In this they have to consider that the all theories are the considered completely by the peoples. Then second one is a ethical relativism. Ethical relativism is that the view when the actions are the morally right when they are approved by the law or customs, and they are the wrong when they are violated by the laws and custom. So in this ethical relativism, what are the enforceable by law considering as the good, and what are the not enforceable by law, it's not considering as the good behavior or the good ethics. Then second one is a psychological egoism. What is the meaning of psychological egoism? Psychological egoism is a theory that all our actions are basically motivated by the self-interest, right? So whatever action you have to consider is consider basically on your self-interest. If you interested in the activity, then you can work very actively. If you cannot interested in those activity, you cannot work very effectively, right? So psychological egoism is the view of the everyone is always motivated to the action in his or her previous self-interest. So the second one is the psychological egoism is a defined that how we are as a human being. So it is the prime idea that selfless act do not exist. It is the belief that all people are selfish. So psychological egoism is defined that how the human beings are working. So what are the prime idea and how they are doing the selfless activities, right? Then after psychological versus the ethical egoism. So whereas the ethical egoism said that we ought to be selfish, Then psychological egoism says only that we are in fact selfish. Okay, so here there are the main difference between these theories, that what are the ethical psychoism and what are the we can say psychological egoism. So here there are the difference between the ethical egoism and the psychological egoism. So first one, there are the ethical egoism is emphasize that the fact that people should act for their self-interest. They can totally important, they can totally believe that what are the people as a human being they are doing for only and only for their self-interest. Then in the psychological egoism, they emphasize that fact that if a people act as a primarily out of the self interest, then and they have to doing this type of work. Then second one is the ethical egoism is a normative theory, then psychological egoism is a descriptive theory. Then ethical egoism is only claims that we should or ought to seek our self interest, even though all person might to do so, not to do so. Some people have doing the work for not for their self interest but doing for the service, right? Then psychological egoism is makes no claim as to how one should act. Okay, then recommends how the human behavior action should be. Then here there are describe the reason of the human behavior and the action. Here they can explain that this type of human they should be they doing this type of behavior, they must doing, and in the psychological they can doing the describe the reason that why these people are doing this type of behavior, right? So here there are the main difference between the ethical and the psychological egoism. Then after, the third theory is a utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is a normative ethical theory that places the locus of right and the wrong we can say solely on the outcome of the choosing one action and policy over the action policies. Means you have to select the right policy, right action from the various types of alternative. Is a one type of utilitarianism. In this view that we ought to produce the most good for the most of peoples, giving a equal consideration to everyone affected. So in the utilitarianism, believe that should make the decision that result in the greatest total utility, or they generate the benefit for the all those who are affected by the decision. For instance, one might you have to use a utilitarianism is a perspective to argue that companies who legally sell the harmful product such as a tobacco, guns or alcohol, there are the considered as a utilitarianism. They can sell the product but with we can say legally accepted form. In the tobacco packet, they have mentioned that this product is harmful to you, but if person is we can say consume this product, then there are the responsibility of the person, not the responsibility of company or we can say any firm. Then after, in making the ethical decision, utilitarianism is often conducted as a cost of benefit analysis that consider the cost of benefit to the all affected parties. Means whenever you produce any product, then how it's affected to the other parties. Take the example, whenever you produce the alcohol, then how it's affected to your customer, your company, your employees, your employers, your we can say government, then political parties. So there are the different parties is called the stakeholder, how they are affected to your product. Then after, what in the utilitarianism there are the two terms are considering. First one is the act utilitarianism and the rule utilitarianism. So first one is the act utilitarianism. What is the meaning of act utilitarianism? Act utilitarianism is a focus on the individual action rather than the general rules. So an act is a right if it is likely to produce a maximum good for the most people involved in the particular situation. That Mill express that the happiness is thus only instincts good. So all other goods things we can say is an instrumental good goods as they are provided the mean of happiness. In the act utilitarianism, they can only focus on the individual action rather than the, we can say, general rules. They can only follow their individual rules. They cannot affect it. They cannot, we can say, thought any regarding the general rules. Then rule utilitarianism, as per this view, we always act as those rules that, if generally follow, would produce the most of good for the most of people, that individually action are right when they are conform for the such rules. So rules, if you according to rule you have to produce the goods, then is called the rule utilitarianism. Okay, so here in the next slide there are the difference between these both terms. Rules utilitarianism is a determine the behavior on the basis of the rules is a design to promote the greatest utility rather than the by examining the particular situation. In this term, they can define, or we can say they can only determine the behavior on the basis of rules is a design or promote for the greatest utilities rather than the expanding the particular situation. They cannot examine any particular situation. They can only follow the rules which have affected only the individual person. There are the three fundamental principles in the utilitarianism followed to create an ethical structure for the society. So first one is the action. There are the right and only right if a consequences of them is a maximize whether is good or anything that is the bad. Then after, the second term is the only thing that is good in the society is the happiness. Then the third one is the action. There are the only corrected if they can maximize the pleasure of the, we can say, majority of everyone. So if there are the consequences that cannot right and that cannot good for the society is considered as a bad, and if the society accept these goods and services, then is called the majority happiness, and pleasure for the majority correct answers. Then after, here there are the main difference between the act utilitarianism and the rule utilitarianism. So first difference is a look at the consequences of each individual act and the calculate utility of each time and the act is performed. Then here in the rule utilitarianism, they can look at the consequences of having everyone follow a particular rule and calculate the overall utility accepting or rejecting the rules. Then second one is a act is a utility, consider action on the case by case basis, because it's an individual performance, so they can consider a one by one case. Then in the rule utilitarianism, consider the general rules, not particular actions. They cannot consider any particular action, they can consider the general rules. Then in the third, in the some instant the actions may be maximize the happiness, but in the other it may be not, because it's an individual. So if individually person can get the happiness to doing this work, but other cannot happy regarding the whatever work can doing by individual, then it is a maximize the happiness, then it should be always be follow even when the doing so does not maximize the happiness, right? Then after fourth one, it is a very specific for the certain situations act utilitarianism, and the rule utilitarianism, it can be generalized principles and rules, right? Then here there are the principle of utility and assessment of choice and action. So according to the utility, according to the necessity of the product, they can divide, they can utilize, and they can assess and then select the particular option. Here there are the principle of utility, then the moral norms, they have considered the rules and regulations, what are the rules are considering it, and then after assessment and selection of the choice. Then after Kantianism, first one is a Kantianism is a we can say established, or this theory is introduced by the Immanuel Kant, a famous ethician, is a describe the duty of ethics as a right action. There are those required by the list of the duties, such as the honest, keep your promises, don't inflict and suffering on the other people, be fair, showing the gratitude to the kindness to the extent by the other. So this theory is considering regarding the ethical behavior and doing the good behavior to the other person. So it's called the Kantianism because it's introduced by the Immanuel Kant. Then John Ravel is a leading ethicist, is a describe the duty is ethics as a valid principle of the duty. There are those that would be voluntary agreed upon the rational, we can say, person in a imaginary contingency situations. So it's a one type of ethical is a define the duty whenever you doing the work at that time in your business you have to duty regarding the voluntary doing the work for the people for the society. Then after all rational peoples will agree the situation abide by the two basic moral principles. First one, each person is entitled to the most extensive amount of the liberty and the compatible with the equal amount of other. Okay, you have to work with the doing the you have to show that what are the harmfulness and what are the benefits for the other peoples. Then after difference in the society, we can say difference in the social power and the economics is a benefit are the justified only when there are the likely to benefit to the everyone. Then and then you have to select your product. Then Kant is a belief that the human life is a valuable because human are the bearers of the rational life. So in the other word, humans are the free rational beings is capable of the rationalism and the behavior and should not be used purely for the enjoyment or the happiness of the another. So you have to produce the product which cannot affect the human lives, which cannot harmful to the human lives, right? Then after here is a difference between the Kantianism and Utilitarianism. So first one, this method is the we can say deontological method, and we can say deontological method. Okay, and this method is totally depend on the psychology of the doing the welfare, doing the human life survival. We can say whatever the services you have to provide to your we can say society is called this theory as this philosophy is totally depend on you on the deontological, we can say total theory is a one type of psychological theory. Then this method is a consequently then it's depend on the consequence and depend on the individual persons. Then Kantianism, we can say Kantianism is the motive is important for and not to the end of the result. So here is a motive is important, here not important the result, here is the main motive is doing the welfareness. So here is a welfare is important, not important the any result. Then the end justice, the means and the actions is judged on the result, not on the intention of the motive. So here they only focus on the wealth maximization, not they cannot we can say main motive of in this theory they cannot have any main motive to doing the welfare of the people. Their main motive is doing the wealth maximization. It is ethics of the duty and it is the ethics of the welfare. Then, in this theory, they have believed the democracy and overlook of the minorities and the individuals. And in the utilitarianism, it is one of the building blocks and the democratic system. So, there are the main difference between the two theories. Then after normative theories of the business ethics, there are the stockholder theory. Whenever in the business, in the organization, in the company, there are in the company they can issue the some type of capitals like the shares, bonds, debentures. So shareholder they are considered as a stockholder of the company. So as a stockholder of the company, so they can working or they can only motive of the doing their welfareness, doing their we can say maximization of their capital. So at that time as a CEO, as a company's promoter, you have to follow the rules and regulation and trying to solve to the issues regarding the stockholder and try to increase their stock value. Then the stakeholder theory. Stakeholder means what? Stakeholder, there are the parties which are directly or indirectly, we can say, affected to the companies. Take the example of employees, employers, then after employees, employers, government, then other parties, financial institutions, bank. So there are the stakeholder of the company. At that time, stakeholder, they have to different type of motives. So you have to take, we can say, take in mind whenever you're doing any decision regarding your business. At that time, keep in mind the stakeholders, and then after you have to decide and you have to take a decision. Then after, social contract theory, because society, okay, so every business or every company, there are the part of the society, so you should follow the rules, norms and regulations of the society, and then you can take the decisions. Then after, there are the last point is the Indian ethical tradition. So let's see. First one, Indian ethics is the one of the greatest tradition in the moral thought. In the world of the philosophy, whose the insight have the influence, the thinkers is the early Greece, Europe, Asia, and the New World. So India's ethics is a very bright, we can say very overall wide philosophy regarding the overall world. Then second one is a many Indian companies now have the recognized the importance of the integrity, transparency, and the open communication. So they believe that the goodwill is a resulting from the adopting and successful implementary of the code of business ethics. What is the meaning of here is a new word is considered as a goodwill. Goodwill means what? Goodwill is a one type of asset of the company and firm. It's a one type of, we can say, intangible assets is the one type. Goodwill is a image, you can consider as the image of the firm. Okay, so whenever any company are working very ethically and very, we can say, usefully working in the society and doing the welfare activities for the society, then the goodwill is of the company can automatically increase. So human values is referred to the orientation toward whatever considered is a desirable, is a preferred by the people living in the society. Then most companies are started ethical programs to the complaint with the guidelines. So over the past 10 years, it's have evolved from the reactive approach to the corporate ethics. There are considered as a corporate ethics. You can take the example of Reliance. In the Reliance, they can start the new foundation. It's called the Reliance Foundation, and according to Reliance Foundation activity, they can doing the welfare activities for the society, right? Then there are the another example, you can take the Infosys. There are the Narayan Murthy and Sudha Murthy who are the promoter, who are the CEO of this firm, and they can doing this type of ethical work. Then after, in the past years, with the recent failure of the many global companies due to the large part of ethical violations, so it has become obvious and we can say proactively managing the corporate ethics is a good business and the directly affected to the bottom line. So there are the several firms are we can say wind up because of they cannot doing the ethically work. So is ethics is very important. It's affected from to your business to bottom line to the top line. Then Indian ethics will play a very central role in the development of the, we can say, culture of the country in the general, mainly of focusing the village culture, like when the season of festivals time, there are should be make the different types of rangolis, the dance, then we can say fights, then we can say there are the considering as a pongal. They can consider the various type of festivals regarding the doing this type of new crops. They whenever they cultivate the new product and new crops, then most wonderful things, there are the greenery, there are the all are make us our culture to be proud, because our culture is we can say very different culture, and in this culture there are the various types of culture are considering mixture of the various we can say religions, right? Then after, though the Gita is a part of Mahabharata, it is the considered to the essence of the Upanishad and the bring out that the moral philosophy, and the Vedant is the, we can say, scripture, we can, along with the Vedas and Upanishads, because of its a small size of simple language, is a many more Hindus know about the Gita than about the Veda and Upanishad. So Veds and Upanishad are also very important for our, we can say, culture. But in the Mahabharata, we can consider as a Gita. Gita is our, we can say, very horrible book. So we can consider it as a very important in our culture, in our, we can say, rules, in our day to day life. So here your unit number 1 is completed. Okay. Thank you so much. So if you have any query regarding in unit number 1, so feel free to contact me. Here your unit number 1 regarding professional ethic is completed. Okay, thank you so much.